On today's podcast, we sit down with renowned music attorney Ben Mclane. Ben has worked with countless artists across the industry and is the author of Music Business in 10 Easy Lessons. We dive deep into how record deals are evolving, the new landscape of distribution and artist rights, and the essentials every artist needs to know before signing with a label or investor. Ben shares the key pitfalls to avoid, reveals his top book and film recommendations for industry insiders, and offers his best advice for building a lasting career as a songwriter, producer, or artist. Whether you're just starting out or looking to protect your creative work, this conversation is packed with actionable insights you won't want to miss. Insiders, are you ready?
Welcome to MUBUTV's Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage artists and music business professionals who are dedicated to having a successful career in the new music industry. Here are your hosts, Rich Ezra and Eric Knight. Welcome back, Insiders, to another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage your music career. On today's episode, we sit down with renowned music attorney and author Ben Mclane. If you're an emerging artist, producer, or songwriter looking to navigate the complexities of record deals, licensing, and investment in today's music industry, you won't want to miss this conversation. We dive deep into how record deals have evolved, the critical elements every artist should look out for when negotiating with labels and distributors, and how to protect the ownership of your music. Ben also shares invaluable insight on partnering with investors and highlights the potential pitfalls to avoid, including the hidden language that can cost you your rights and revenue. Plus, we explore what really holds artists back from success, the importance of work ethic and content output, and Ben's top book recommendations for anyone aspiring to have a long-lasting career in music. If you've ever wondered what it takes to build a solid foundation and thrive as a creator in this industry, then this episode is for you. So stay tuned. You'll walk away with the knowledge and confidence to make smarter decisions for your music career. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Hey, Insiders! Are you an aspiring musician, artist, band, or future music business professional looking to take your career to the next level? Well, look no further. At MUBUTV, we offer personalized career counseling and coaching designed specifically for folks like you.
Imagine having both of us by your side, guiding you through every step of your music journey. Our sessions are tailored to meet your unique needs, focusing on critical aspects of your music career, such as refining your songs, defining your artist story, identifying your target audience, and enhancing your social media presence, just to name a few.
Whether you're just starting out or looking to elevate your existing career, we've got you covered. Our comprehensive approach ensures you get insights on everything from live shows to branding and marketing strategies. We understand that every artist is unique. That's why our coaching is personalized just for you.
And here's the best part. We offer flexible coaching packages that fit any budget. Choose from individual sessions ranging from 30 to 90 minutes or save with our discounted 4-session packages. Experience custom sessions designed to enhance your music career with opportunities for greater savings when you choose bundled sessions. Investing in your musical journey has never been more accessible.
Imagine the clarity and direction you'll gain after just one session. The feedback on your songs, the strategies to grow your audience, and the confidence to perform live, all tailored just for you.
So why wait? Don't let uncertainty hold you back. Join us for your free 15-minute discovery call at book.mubutv.com for a transformative coaching experience that will elevate your music career. That's book.mubutv.com.
Hi, this is Jesse K from New Agency, and you're listening to the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast.
Welcome back, Insiders. Today, we welcome back a special friend of the podcast, Ben Mclane. I've known Ben for many, many years, as you have. He's actually a returning guest to the show.
Yeah, he's one of the original 10 that came out on the video series when we first launched back in 2012.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's hard to believe. 13 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
It's unbelievable that it's been that long.
Time flies. It's unbelievable. And this was a really, really interesting conversation, not only from the perspective of the music industry, but for some of the things that we got into in this conversation, as you're going to hear. One of the most interesting, Eric, for me was the whole concept of licensing versus ownership. This goes to the heart of the transformation of the music business from a copy model to an access model, because behind that statement is that technology has allowed everybody today to make music. There's no long, it wasn't that long ago, ladies and gentlemen, when making records was something that was as expensive as a house. Literally, and you needed the resources of a record company to pay for recordings. They were like, even on the cheap side, 60, 80 grand, 90 grand to make a record. On
then on the top end, 150, 200,
250,
350,
450.
Yeah.
I mean, it got really, really expensive to make records. I mean, I knew people that were making records for $850,000 and they still needed more money. So this was a very, very important part because a lot of artists today are making their own recordings. And that's the part that I thought was so interesting because it puts them in a position of power for ownership.
Yeah.
That was the interesting part of it.
Yeah, which I think is so important in this day and age. One of the other points that I thought was really great, I'm from the artist side. I felt that artist independence with what Ben is about to tell you in this interview. Don't rely on managers or labels to do all the work for you. Success requires constant hustle, releasing content, and pushing your own career forward. I mean, how many times have we said that, Rich, in our shows?
So many.
Yeah. Where we can't, you can't want this more. I can't want this more than you.
That's absolutely right. You are so right with that, Eric, because it's what you're talking about is something deeper than that. It's a consciousness. It's a consciousness that we have talked about endlessly on this show that has to be raised.
The manager is going to give me a career.
If I only had an agent.
Exactly. And that's not the way it works. So it's something to really consider, and a lot of great content that's coming up on this episode. So with that, insiders, sit back, relax, and enjoy our featured conversation from Muse Expo 2025 with Ben Mclane.
Ben, welcome back.
Thanks for having me again.
It's great. It's great to see you. I want to start off with you. How have record deals evolved in recent years, especially in terms of artist right and distribution models? And I guess, the question being, what should emerging artists be aware of when negotiating with labels or distributors to ensure that they retain control of their music?
Okay. Yes, in the old days, labels, not so much distributors, but record companies, if they were funding the sound recording, the master, the record, that's a single, an EP, or an album, they would tend to own it because they paid for it, and that's traditionally the way it was done. And you'll see work for hire language in the recording contracts. So you always have to look for that when you're doing a deal with a label or even a distributor, because that's still the way it's usually presented to me when I'm representing an artist if a label's paying for it. But if the artist is creating the record themselves on their own dime, which they tend to do more frequently these days, they own that sound recording. That's a copyright. And they should try to get a licensing deal instead, where the label that's putting it out and promoting it would still have an adequate amount of time to make their money back, because they're going to have to spend money to at least promote it. But they didn't spend money to make it, remember? Although sometimes they want to try to buy it from you. But really, unless somebody's giving you a big check, I would say try to hold out and own your rights. Could you imagine if you were Nirvana and maintained ownership of their original albums?
Right.
That ended up at the time they probably thought we're just a punk rock band,
right?
Never going to sell anything. But then it ended up being worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's probably better to try to maintain your rights if you can, and that's the sound recording copyright. The other copyright you hear about is publishing, which is a composition, songwriting, but that has nothing to do with the master of the record. Usually the label's not trying to grab publishing, let's hope. But distributors, they're really just putting your record out on platforms mostly, the DSPs, Spotify, Amazon, those for streaming really. So they usually don't try to grab ownership of right, and most of them don't do any marketing anyway. So, and when you're doing a deal like that, I always try to keep the term short. Try to keep 1, 2, 3 years if you can. If you're happy, you can continue with it. But they usually want exclusivity, so you can't be putting it out through different channels. So that's an important thing. But even if you do a deal with a record label, they usually want it to be long-term because they're promoting your first record, and then they want options for more because they're helping develop you. At least that's the way it's supposed to be. So, but always try to get a shorter-term deal if you can, because if you're happy, you could extend it. And always try to own the masters if you can. Try to ask for a licensing deal. It's worth asking for. If you can't get a licensing deal, you can ask for a reversion, which means at some point in the future, once the label maybe makes their money back, 10, 15, 20 years, they might give you the master back. Although a lot of companies wanted to build a catalog, because you can imagine Capitol Records may not exist today if they didn't own the Beatles masters, or RCA if they didn't own the Elvis masters. So still the mentality is I don't think labels voluntarily want to give the rights back, but depending on your leverage in the negotiation, sometimes you can get it back in the future. So those are the kind of things you might want to try to look out for. But those things haven't really changed. It's always been the way you'd want to negotiate a deal. If you're repping an artist, if you're on the label side, it's just the reverse.
Ben, in your book, you cover the role of investors in the music industry. And I'm curious, how can artists best assess the value of investors in their career or business model? And what are the key considerations that they need to keep in mind when partnering with an investor to avoid pitfalls down the line?
If you're a new artist, unless you're independently wealthy, and if you're not with a record company, you're going to need an investor to help you produce a great sounding record and or market the record, and you're going to need to do both. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to make a great record if you're not going to market it properly, and vice versa. So, and a rule of thumb would be, if you're spending $1 on recording, you should spend $1 on marketing. But obviously, it could be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to really do it right, depending on who you are, what kind of artist you are. But investors can fill that gap of funding. You just have to be careful if you're taking money from somebody. If somebody's going to give you something, they're going to want something in return. You just want to make sure it's fair. But again, if I'm negotiating for an artist, I'm really coming from the artist's perspective here. Try to always maintain ownership of the copyrights. You'd want to pay people off from the profits that are earned from the release of your record. You don't want, and that can vary. Some people just want their money back, and some people want their money back plus a profit. And sometimes people want a profit that's quite large and could be many, many, many years down the line. And we know that streaming sometimes doesn't translate into a lot of big dollars until you're getting into maybe the millions of streams category. So a lot of investors would say, well, how am I going to make my money back just off this streaming business? So I think I'd want to also make money off your touring money, your merchandising money, maybe your songwriting money. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you just have to maybe put caps on things like that and try to limit what the investor's getting paid back out of, because otherwise you need money to flow through to you as the artist so you can live too. So, I mean, just the return on investment to the investor, just try to always keep something that, you want to incentivize people to give you money and feel like they're getting something in return for it, but just try to stay within reason. And a lot of times with new artists, I'm going through this right now with a young artist, she doesn't really realize big picture. She just wants to be super generous, and the investor's more like a friend. So it's not to take advantage of them, but I think she wants to be too generous, in my opinion. And I said, later you might regret this. So just try to keep things in check if you can.
Yeah, very much so. I wanted to ask you, with the rise of streaming platforms and various licensing opportunities, especially in film and TV and video games and advertisement, are there some sort of key terms that you feel artists and songwriters need to look out for when negotiating a sync licensing deal?
Again, you mentioned that it is a licensing deal, so just always make sure that there's no sneaky language in those agreements where you're transferring any ownership of your copyrights. It really should be a license. And usually, if somebody's putting your music, let's just say in an episode of a television show or in a movie, it's really just a one-off situation, so it should be a non-exclusive license. So you could continue to license that song a million different ways. But because if you ever see the word exclusive, that means you could only give it to those people sometime, and then you can't use it any other way in any other sync opportunities, film, TV, commercials. So just make sure, and sometimes that's okay. If somebody's going to want to use your music, let's just say for a Honda commercial, which would be a big budget thing. I mean, they might give you several $100,000, $1 million for the right to use that song. Let's hope, right? So they may want an exclusive, either saying you can't use that song for anything for a period of time. It could be a year, 2, 3, 4 years, or it would say you can't use it in any of their automobile-related commercial, but you could put it in a Coke commercial because those aren't competing.
Correct.
They just don't want you, now doing a Ford commercial. It's
right.
Competition. But generally speaking, 90% of the time, sync licenses are non-exclusive. But once it's in the program, it's in there forever. You can't pull your music out. So you will see perpetuity language, which means forever. But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that they can keep putting your music and things in perpetuity. It just means that one show, that episode, once it's created and goes out on, it's released, it exists forever. And then it's going to go onto the internet, YouTube, etc. So you can't. Although in the old days, you'll notice some of these shows, let's just say Golden Girls, you know, the theme song for that originally was Andrew Gold's Thank You for Being a Friend, with him singing. In the later episodes, you'll notice it's Thank You for Being a Friend with somebody else singing.
Right.
Because I think that, you know, he must have done like a term licensing thing, and then he probably wanted a lot, I'm only guessing here, wanted a lot of money, and they're like, we'll just re-record that with somebody else.
Right.
We don't need to pay you again.
Exactly.
Yeah. But now I'm noticing these it usually says, once we put it in that show, it's in perpetuity. So, but I think way back in the day, there was ways you could maybe put term limits on that, but I haven't seen that in a long time. So you just have to be, again, nothing wrong with that. It's just sometimes see the word perpetuity. You have to make sure you know the context that it's
right.
in.
Hey, Insiders, we hope that you've been enjoying our featured conversation. Stay tuned because we've got so much value coming your way. But before we dive back in, a word from our sponsor.
Hey, Eric, as an artist, what do you find are the most challenging aspects to a music career, especially when you're starting out?
Well, I think one of the first things is just trying to get the direction of who you are as an artist, where you want to go, where you want to be. And, you know, we've talked about it on the show a lot. Who is your target audience? Who you are? What do you stand for? What do you believe in? What do you think would resonate with an audience? And so those are some of the things that I would feel being a new artist. Obviously, what I know now is different because I know these things, but for people that are out there like our audience that don't have necessarily any direction to go would be the first things that I would start off with.
And having the songs that
Absolutely.
incorporate those elements that you're speaking of into it. That's so important today.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why we started MUBUTV and why we started this new consulting service that we're offering to all of our insiders out there, because that is another one of the big things. I mean, that is the big thing, is like having the great songs. That's what it really starts off. Our friend Don Grierson always said, it always starts with a great song. So that's probably, besides putting together what your audience and what your target audience is the single most important thing. Where are your songs at currently today? Are you collaborating with people? Are you trying to go out to networking events where you can connect with other songwriters and stuff like that? So
yeah, and what are your strengths?
Exactly.
You know, are you a strong lyric writer? Are you a strong melody writer? Are you a strong musician, a player?
Right.
You know, and it's really important to get really strong clarity on those issues before proceeding.
I totally agree, Rich. And, you know, with our consulting services, we offer a myriad of different packages and we've made it super affordable for everybody. So, you know, if you guys are interested out there in connecting with us on a coaching call, you can visit book.mubutv.com and start off with a free 15-minute discovery call.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We start with an initial 15-minute call where we can get a sense of who you are, what are the issues that you specifically have, right, and want to work on.
Exactly.
And we can go from there. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we tailor everything to your needs. It's not like a cookie cutter thing. We kind of really want to get to know who you are as an artist, where you at today, what's the snapshot of you as an artist today, and then start trying to craft something that's tailor-made for you. So again, if you're interested, visit us at book.mubutv.com for your 15-minute discovery call.
Hi, this is stylist Dina Tashon from DMT Styles, and you're listening to the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast.
Ben, throughout your career, you know, you've worked with a lot of acts, and what do you feel holds artists back from having success in their careers?
Well, some artists I think they're not lazy per se. I don't want to mention any names, but sometimes they just think, hey, I'll make a great record, and then everything else takes care of itself. I'll find a manager to do all the heavy lifting, or I'll get a deal and they'll do everything, and that's great if it works out that way. But number one, you may never find that person or third party, and a lot of those people wouldn't even want to be involved if they didn't see you putting in the effort yourself. So it just seems like artists these days, unfortunately, and Eric, you know, as an artist yourself, you have to make record and you really have to hustle and do some of the marketing things. You can't wait on any of that. And so I think a lot of people aren't really prepared to do that or want to do that, or they just want to rebel against it because they think something's going to come along.
Yeah.
And you have your window of time. You don't want to waste too much time.
Exactly. Yeah, I find it very disheartening when I see an artist that has put so much effort into their thing and then they just put it out there and there's like, okay, well, if it does good, it's going to do good. If not, and it's just like, man, you're really missing the ball of what's going on here and what you really need to do. And it's an interesting phenomenon that happens. So, yeah.
Well, that, and I think you have to be prepared to put a lot of content out. And if the first thing's a hit, great. But even if it is, there's people are going to expect a follow-up, and chances are it's not going to be, so you have to keep putting stuff out. And even if, I've found with some clients, even if they never really have a hit in the traditional sense, when they have a lot of music out there, it is all generating streams and potential sync opportunities, so it makes money for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the more content you have out, the better. And you know, I'm not a creator myself, so I'm not saying it's easy to do, but I think some people don't put out enough.
Yeah,
material.
definitely.
You know, Ben, throughout your life, have there been any books, films, or documentaries that have really inspired you, professionally speaking, that you could recommend to our listeners?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've watched a million movies and TV shows about music, and I read a lot. By the way, I've read probably every music business book because I love learning. And like Don Passman really needs another plug, but you know, and he's a friend of mine. But since he wrote that original, everything you need to know about the music business, you know, that's still. I still think that's probably the best overall book. I mean, I have a book myself, and if we could mention it at the end, but
absolutely.
But his is very, you know, it's comprehensive but digestible. Because I mean, when I first started in the business, there was the music.
This book.
Business of music, which was like trying to read the Bible or something.
Yes.
It was too complicated.
Scientific.
Yeah, it was like a textbook or something. So I still like the Passman book, but there's so many different books out there, and like mine's.
Give us the title. What's the title?
The Music Business in 10 Easy Lessons, and mine's more. You know, it's more like a handbook pamphlet. It's not very. You could sit down in an hour or two and, you know, probably get through it. You know, if you really were a speed reader, but it is really geared towards entry level things. You know, all these things that kept coming up to me over and over again. So that's why I came up with the 10 that I thought were the most common. But anyway, I use my book as I teach classes in schools, and I've used my book as a textbook. I've used Passman's book as a textbook. I do like the Brabeck book for publishing.
Yeah,
because it's hard to find a good publishing book, and I like theirs too, because again they try to make it sort of easier to understand it. And both Passman and Brabeck, they will constantly do new editions and try to update it with. It's harder for me because I'm just doing this solo, but anyway, they're ever doing new editions with new whatever's hot and cutting edge. They try to cover it. So, but I think you need to look. You always want to. I found, and I don't know if that question will come up, but like a lot of things don't change that much, but there are sometimes just like AI or streaming or whatever comes along now and then makes it does change the business a little bit. So you need to understand it.
Definitely. Ben, what advice do you have for those that are committed to building a career as a songwriter, producer, or artist? What would you tell them?
I would say work hard to try to develop sort of a signature sound if you can. I mean, that may be left up to other people to decide, but I think it's important to have your own thing. You know, you don't want to just copy somebody. I think you want to be commercial if that's what your thing is. I mean, I would hope anybody wants to make money. I think you still have to have a commercial aspect to what you do. I mean, you can be super niche or do just something just because you love it, but I mean, if you're trying to make a living and support your family, I think you have to have something that can connect with a lot of people because you really want people to become your fans, whether you're a writer, producer, or an artist of your work, you know, and can continue to want to support you and hopefully help you monetize your content. But that goes back again to, you know, try to create amazing music and try to put out a lot of content, and also make sure that you register with, you know, like the sound exchange, with BMI ASCAP, with the music licensing collect. So when you are making money, you can actually collect it, and a lot of people kind of forget that aspect of it.
Yeah. Really quickly, Ben, to add to that question that I just asked, for somebody that doesn't have access to a Ben Mclane currently as an attorney, what things, if you could tell them in a speed round, what to avoid, besides obviously don't sign anything without a music attorney?
Well, I mean, I think it depends what kind of deal are you a producer, are you a songwriter, are you an artist, but when you see words like exclusivity or assignment of rights, assignment of copyrights, those are red flags, and they're not necessarily a bad thing because it might make sense, or people are paying you properly, or that just needs to be part of the deal for it to be worthwhile to the other side. But and then long term, I don't, if you see things that are 5 albums, 7 albums, 10 years, that's long.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes a career for somebody. So do you really want to have to commit yourself to that? And by the way, normally it's the other side has the options to stretch it out that long. They could drop you at any time.
Right.
It usually doesn't work in reverse, so. And when you're exclusive to somebody, people don't seem to understand that. It means you can't write songs for other people, you can't make records for other people, you can't even do features for other people, appear on other people's records. So just be careful about the language. You got to read it carefully. If you can't understand it, just hire a lawyer. It's worth it. It's really worth it, because I spent half my career getting people out of bad deals because they just didn't.
We know firsthand.
They just wanted to cut corners, or they thought they had it under control or understood it. So, but sometimes it's just one word can make that difference in the contract.
Another thing that I found that's crazy, and this might sound crazy, you probably wouldn't agree with it, but I've actually taken, not anything that I'm signing or anything, but I've taken contract language and run it through AI and tell me what the things are about. That's another thing with the access to AI that we have. Even if you're not, if you don't have an attorney, maybe run it through the AI just to see what are the, things to avoid. I don't know if that's something.
No, I mean, that's something. If that technology is available to you, you might as well utilize it. But even AI or Google or whatever you're going to use, it may miss something too.
Right. So, I agree.
But if it's an important enough agreement, run it through AI, get an idea.
Maybe just to understand it better.
I want clients to understand.
Right.
They really should. It's their deal. I've always been the type to explain it, copy people on everything so they understand it. But before you sign on that dotted line, you really might want to have somebody study it that's really going to pay attention to every word and not just give you like a,
right.
Which, because I don't know, AI could get to the point where it is that precise, but maybe it's just an overview,
right.
And it doesn't, there's gaps,
Right, and hiring a music attorney, not a personal injury attorney. I mean, somebody that specializes in music.
Right, it's just like me. I don't do criminal law,
right.
bankruptcy law. I don't know anything about it. I'm a lawyer, but I don't, so I have to refer.
Right.
So same. But I can't say every lawyer's like that. Some lawyers will take anything.
Right.
But I can tell you from experience, earlier in my career, I might have been more like that. But you just get over your head sometimes, and you don't want to screw something up for somebody and ruin their life. So it's better to refer it out. Go with an expert. There's, music law experts, film and TV experts, bankruptcy. They're out there, right? Just go with an expert.
Ben, where can people best reach you? Is it through your website or through socials?
Well, I have a website,
yeah,
which is benmclane.com.
Okay.
And I'm in North Hollywood, California. And all my social links are, I do have, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
They're all there on
all the main ones
on the website.
Yeah, and email. It's all there. So
beautiful.
But my everything's sort of on the website. Even though I probably need to update my website, but at least it works.
It's all there.
It works. Yeah.
Wonderful, Ben. We can't thank you enough for coming by and doing this.
It's a real honor to have you again.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. You are a return guest, and we're very, very grateful to have you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Great, and your show is amazing.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Such a good conversation. I love talking to Ben, and he's been a friend of ours for so long. He brought up something that I thought was so important in this conversation, Eric, that I think is an element that's that essence of real value for our listeners, which is the whole thing of don't cut corners.
Right.
Do things properly in the legal sense, ladies and gentlemen, because those kinds of things you must live by. What I'm saying is that when you sign a contract, when you sign an agreement, you must live with the consequences. If you don't believe me, ask Bruce Springsteen, ask Elton John, ask Billy Joel. These are people who are, legendary cases where they have signed agreements that they didn't quite know about or and they had to live with the consequences of them. And you don't want to do that. So do things right. Don't cut corners legally. Get legal representation.
We have Rich. He's our attorney.
Exactly.
He's actually our, we didn't reveal this in the interview, but it just dawned on me as you were talking now, Rich.
Absolutely.
That he's my attorney. He's been my attorney for my music stuff, and he's been our attorney with MUBUTV, and, unraveling some things that we've had to take care of in the past. So we can speak from experience that you definitely need to do, it's better to get an attorney up front to take care of it before you have a mess later and you're trying to untangle and unravel that mess.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that he talked about, that half his time was spent on undoing mistakes from previous
deals
and he said because it was people cutting corners.
Right. One of the other areas that I thought was absolutely crucial was, again, getting back to why it's so important, what to avoid if you don't have a music attorney. When you see words like exclusivity or assignment of rights, assignment of copyrights, those are absolute red flags, and that they're not necessarily a bad thing, but then long term, if you see things that are 5 albums, 7 albums, 10 years, that's long. So yeah, and that's sometimes a career for somebody. So it's something that you have to be really careful about what you're getting into. And I guess the rule of thumb is do not sign anything until you put it in front of a music attorney, not somebody that does personal injury, not somebody that does, workplace attorney. You want somebody that specializes in the music business.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is a crucial distinction. Jay Cooper, the famous Jay Cooper, the attorney, taught me that. He said, when you become a lawyer, do you know that it takes between 5 and 7 years to become a music attorney?
Right.
Not an entertainment attorney, someone who's brilliant at films and television and other elements, but music. And that's what you always want, to be represented by a music attorney. It can make the difference between success and failure.
Hey, Insiders, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. To get show notes, links, and everything that was mentioned during this interview, head on over to our official website at mubutv.com/podcast/show notes. If you're enjoying the content and what we're doing here on the show, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts from. And don't forget to rate and review our show at iTunes. 5-star reviews are always welcome and help to ensure that our podcast stands out on the top-rated and new and noteworthy charts on iTunes and our space. You can also find us at social media at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter X, all ending with the handle MUBUTV, which is spelled MUBUTV. Don't forget to catch our flagship show, the MUBUTV Music Business Insider video series, airing every week on YouTube at youtube.com/MUBUTV. This show was produced and created by Rich Ezra and Eric Knight. Theme music by Disciples of Babylon, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast.